So there has to be a click, an important click between patient, doctor, and the clinic where you're going. So in terms of choosing your clinic, of course, you first have to check that it's a registered clinic, that it has a formal paper to understand that it's doing their local government law, that they're a registered clinic, that they're the administration that regulates that country's medicine or reproductive medicine has been properly registered, the same with international registrations. And once you know it's a formal clinic, the rest has to do with how you will access to the patient. So what kind of information they give you, how this information is given across to the patient, how it makes you feel. The understanding is important. So every patient will have to find the way that the clinic has to communicate to them. So transparency is super important for them to understand your clinic. Having access to your doctors or access to the information of the clinics, having full transparency on pricing, results. The information, knowledge is power. So as long as the clinic is giving you the information that you need and is helping you understand what your experience will be and through what your journey, for me, that's extremely important, because if you understand what your real expectations, as long as for your reproductive training, are coming into, that helps you understand your process, what the clinic is going to give you, and understand where your priorities are going to set in. So for me, it's about information, knowledge, understanding, and making you feel secure, not only in the process, which is important, but also in the understanding of what your diagnosis is, why you are going to a fertility treatment, what kind of fertility options are going to be important to you. The third part is understanding what kind of laboratory you are. So, of course, your doctor is super important in an IVF program, but the laboratory is just as important or even more. So you have to understand that it has a top technological clinic, okay, that you have access to top embryologists, okay, that they have the access to every single resource that we have today in reproductive medicine, whether it's genetics, whether we're talking about RI witness to take control, to make sure that that the embryo is going to the correct place. So this is technological tools that will help us make sure that the safety of the patient and the safety of the embryos are fulfilled. It's not that you're going to access to all the technologies that are available in reproductive medicine, but if the clinic has access to them, it means they're engulfing everything you have. And then talking with your doctor, you will know what kind of technology will be the best for you. We developed the clinic focusing on top of the line quality reproductive medicine. So the whole lab was designed. So the first thing that we wanted to really take advantages is that being a new project and having all the access to engineering and technology, VR systems was super important. So the first part of technology was creating the lab environment that will comply with all specifications of Mexican legislation, but also European and American legislation, to have good quality air, because air is super important inside the lab. So we have important air managing systems and air filtering systems that will help us create that unique lab space that will help us get the best possible results. Second is all the technology that we brought has been top of the line around the world, has been explored in the European Union, in the States, that they will comply with our regulations and have demonstrated a good access to high quality embryo culture systems. Okay, so we're using tri-gas incubators. We brought most of our equipment from the United States that will comply with regulation, like the setup of table systems, microscopes, ICSI, micromanipulators. They have been regulated throughout the world and have the best results possible. And for me, the most important part was how do we not only comply, but take a step forward for patient safety, embryo safety, and avoiding mistakes. Okay, so we did install, we're the only clinic in Mexico that has a fully integrated RI witness, which is a radio frequency code that allows us to track the embryos. This helps us in two parts. One, making sure that the correct embryo and the correct gametes are given to the correct patient, so avoiding mistakes, because when there are humans involved, there could always be a risk of mistakes. So this is super important to use technological tools as witness to avoid this kind of mistakes. But second, it also helps us track what's happening inside our lab, to make sure that the results are best possible, as to how much time consuming we're doing through procedures. If something goes wrong or if something is not up to par with the KPIs that we're looking for as to results, is where could it have gone wrong? what kind of new systems we're using, what kind of new cultures, if we bring in new technology into lab, making sure that this impacts in a good way. And the final and last part is our PGTA and genetics program, which has to do with one technology to do biopsies on embryos that will hurt the least possible, but also having the right associates with who we can run the different genetic testing. One, for compliance, to make sure that they use the kind of same procedures to make sure that the right diagnosis is given to the right patient. And second, that they have access to the top technological genetics tools that will help us get the right diagnosis on the embryo. So reproductive medicine has become such a big bubble that we need to use partners that will give us the best possible results on the technology. Yeah. Okay, everybody asks us it. So one is location. Okay, you have to understand that we're taking care of very important material. So we do need to be in a building that will survive and have the regulations up to standard with the civil code that shouldn't fall. So we're one of the most modern buildings in Mexico City, which the reality is if we would have damage here, we would have a very big situation inside the city, no? And the second around this is that once the embryos and oocytes are frozen, they don't depend on energy, okay? Nitrogen tanks depend on the nitrogen that you set up on a regular basis. So these tanks can last up to 2 or 3 weeks without any refilling, and they do not need power for this kind of situation. And what does need power, which are incubators, etc., they're hooked up to a 48-hour power plant that we have in the building that will maintain in case that we lose power, etc. Fortunately, the situation on earthquakes in Mexico tends to be a long time, and normally we haven't had a power shortage in this area for more than 12 hours over the past, I think, 20 years or something. My education in reproductive medicine, I did in the Autonomous University of Mexico. That's where I did my formal education. But the reality is I've done a lot of training outside of Mexico. I've been in Belgium, the States, in Austria to do special training courses. So reproductive medicine is very dynamic. I think I enjoyed a lot of my training when I was in Lovaina in Belgium with Dr. Tomate Hulk, which was like my exposure to another big area of reproductive medicine and endometriosis. But that was for me an important part of my training. Yeah, 20% of our patients are international clients, and it comes from a lot of reasons. But Mexico has a very healthy and very good reproductive history behind it. And the reality is that most of our patients that come from international background come from the States. There's a thing of good healthcare, access to doctors, being able to talk and have a direct communication to your medical team. There tends to be, because of liability, because of the workload that they have in the States, there tends to be more access directly to your practitioner. And third of all, pricing. We do have a lower price range than what happens in the United States, but also with European countries. So we've had people from France, Spain, Portugal, China, Canada, and our main international client base is the United States and Central America. This has to do with a combination on the cost of IVF process, but also on the high quality of technological and history that Mexico has in reproductive medicine.